Congratulations to Jesse Marsch. Congratulations to Canada. He could, when all is said and done, use this to become a Great White North legend. Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show will be talking, Jesse to Canada. It's happening. It is happening, eh? Johnny's pay-to-play, Iron Claw, Arsenal holding on, L-Tree blowing up, EPL as MLS playoffs, USL branding, St. Pauli, hell is real, at least for someone, Messi pissed off, fighting in Canada. Let's see, favorite soccer calls, and so much more. But first, joining as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this Monday, May 13th in the year 2024?
I'm doing well. You and I are like two ships passing in the night because I returned yesterday from New York back to Los Angeles, and I'm told that today you are in New York City.
Yes, for those that are just listening, I am in New York City. You can see I am in my hotel room here. I am en route to a much longer trip that will take me over to the great country of Germany, where we'll be doing for about 2 weeks, filming some stuff that you will see this summer during our broadcast of the Euros. So I'm excited about that, but a stopover here in New York to do some promotion for this summer. And so I am coming to you from my hotel room. Mosse is manning the ship, the State of the Union ship back there, as you can see in our studios. But, I wanted to make sure we did this because there was all sorts of stuff that has happened since our last show, including stuff that's happening up to the minute. I mean, I was coming in from JFK and there was stuff that was going down. Did you watch anything on your travels, my friend?
On the flight back to LA, I did watch the Nicolas Cage movie Dream Scenario.
Ooh, I haven't even heard about this. What is this?
No, you have heard it. You watched it. It was your What Are We Watching submission a few weeks back. It's the movie.
Wait, which one?
It's the movie where people are seeing Nick Cage in their dreams.
Oh, my God. When did I see that? Where was that? So what did you think? Did you like it? I can't remember if I liked it. It was probably one of these.
You disliked it. I thought it was okay, clever, not great. So I liked it a little bit better than you, but I didn't think it was anything special.
Yeah, it wasn't great. And Nick Cage movies, we all know they're a little bit wacky, and he kind of certainly gravitates to that. And it can be wacky in the most beautiful and creative sense. This was not one of them. But now I know exactly what you're talking about. And he's perfected playing those kind of schlubby type of guys that you think that there's another layer and something else going on behind the eyes there or underneath, and it wasn't really so much in this one. And it was a little preachy and stuff like that. So, but you didn't like it either. But it'll get you across the country.
Correct.
Yeah. So my submission today is Iron Claw. Have you heard about this wrestling movie?
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it.
All right, so it's out now, and I think it's on HBO, Max, whatever those things, and it's about this wrestling family. It is based on a true story, and my son and I watched it, and we ended up looking up all of this stuff. And there are wrestling movies out there, The Wrestler, for example, and Mickey Rourke and all that kind of stuff. This is about this wrestling family and this supposed curse that they have on their family. And they go through it, and it's a bunch of brothers and a father who was a wrestler, and all of the different problems that they have in the ring, but mostly outside of the ring that come to the fore. And I think it was really well done. Zac Efron's in it, a bunch of other stars that I recognize their faces. I don't necessarily know exactly who they are, but I thought it was well done. I don't think that it's as good as other wrestling movies, including The Wrestler. I thought it was well acted, but I think that trying to do a 70s movie and make it authentic in terms of the set design and the costuming, I think it is incredibly hard. And this is one of those movies that was set in the 70s and 80s, and I think they really struggled, and it almost pulled me out of the movie because the hair and stuff like that, there's something that's not quite right about it. And so those costume artists and those people, they don't get enough credit, the men and women that make it look authentic. And not only make it look authentic, but don't make it so stark that it pulls you out of the story that you're telling. It has to complement it. And in this case, I thought it was a little distracting. Distracting, that's the word that I'm looking for. But I think it's a good watch, and I think it's a crazy story. And once you look it up online about this family and what they went through, it's nuts.
Interesting. Well, I will have to check it out.
Yeah, so check that out. All right, should we light this candle, my friend?
Let's do it.
Where shall we start?
There's lots of Copa America news to discuss, including a bombshell that broke about an hour ago. We did mention this as a possibility recently on the pod, but it became official today. Gianni Marsch will be Canada's next coach. He takes charge right away. He will coach them in the Copa America this summer and has a contract through the 2026 World Cup, when Canada, as we all know, will be co-host alongside the U.S. and Mexico.
So I will reiterate my comments from, I don't know, when this was kind of floated out there. And look, there are agents out there and good agents out there that prime the pump and float stuff out there. But when this rumor started to circulate, I said, this is a great thing if this comes to fruition. I think it's great for Canada, and I think it's great for Gianni. And now that it it has been confirmed, I'm real happy for Gianni, because I think that this puts him in a place where he can do some really good things. Let's be honest, you only have an upside in terms of Canada. They've yet to win an actual game in a World Cup, and we all know the return finally in the last World Cup after that 30 years or whatever it was since '86. And this is an opportunity, I think, for Gianni Marsch to be with a team that I think can do some things. And look, it's not the greatest team out there, but you know, I'm excited to see what he does. I'm excited to see if he can parlay this into something great. And look, having, in this case, if Greg Berhalter continues on, 2 Americans leading teams into the World Cup next in 2026, and 2 CONCACAF teams, and 2 rivals. Oh, and by the way, 2 hosts. Those are good stories, and I want to tell those stories. So congratulations to Gianni Marsch. Congratulations to Canada. He could, when all is said and done, use this to become a Great White North legend. Can you see any problems with this, Mosse?
No, I agree with you. It's a good job for him. They've got talent. If they can get out of their own way, there's potential there. You've got players like Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, Kyle Larin, Tejan Buchanan, Eustachio. So he's got some players to work with. And as you mentioned, the bar is very low because Canada doesn't have a great pedigree, certainly in World Cups. So I'm excited to see what Gianni can do there. It is interesting to me. There's a portion of the U.S. fan base that would rather have Gianni Marsch as the U.S. coach rather than Greg Berhalter. And Gianni Marsch, in his position as pundit recently, has been critical of Greg Berhalter. So that makes for a fascinating dynamic the next time the U.S. plays against Canada.
Yeah, I don't care about that. I mean, I enjoyed listening to Gianni Marsch as a pundit, if you will. I thought he was really good, but I know his heart is set on coaching, and I'm glad that he has gotten this opportunity. I'm not one of those that is disappointed that Gianni Marsch isn't the coach, and Gianni Marsch isn't the coach over Greg Berhalter. I just think this is a good thing for Canada. Just a little quick story about Canada. The first World Cup that I ever watched on television was the '86 World Cup, and I'll never forget seeing Canada in it because the U.S. was not in it, and so I didn't have a team. But growing up in Detroit, you know, neighbors of Canada, and spending a lot of time in Canada, they were my adopted team. And I back in '86 when I saw Canada play in the World Cup, I would never have believed that it would take so long for the men's team to get back to a World Cup, which they did in 2022. So I'm hoping for good things. It is good for the region. I think it's good for the tournament. I think it's good for everybody involved, whether it's Gianni, whether it's Greg, whether it's MLS, for Canada to be good in this World Cup in 2026, as we said, as a host. And they need somebody that is going to, you know, has experience, that has a fire, and I do think that Gianni Marsch does. I wonder who else was interviewed, and I also wonder how, you know, we get a little up in arms and we get a little protective when it's not a coach of the nationality. I wonder how the Canadian fan base is going to feel about having Gianni. Oh, they're Canadian. They don't get really mad about a whole lot of stuff. But who else was in line for possibly this job? Is there a part of the Canadian fan base that is a little bent out of shape because it's not a Canadian? Or is there a part of the Canadian fan base out there that is a little bent out of shape because they feel like they could have done better and they deserved better going into 2026? Maybe some of the comments and the criticisms that we oftentimes hear relative to Greg Berhalter can apply to Jesse Marsch. But we'll see going forward. So congratulations, Jesse. We hope you do good things, just not against the U.S.
And I will say on the Greg Berhalter front, he dealt with this in the last cycle with Tata Martino, remember. A lot of U.S. fans wanted Tata to get the U.S. job. He ended up going to Mexico instead. Everybody thought that would be a problem for Berhalter, but Berhalter ended up beating Tata like a drum in the last cycle and then performed better than him at the World Cup. And by the end of the cycle, nobody was lamenting the fact that the U.S. didn't hire Tata Martino.
Yeah, it's great for competition. It's great for the drama and the theater going forward. And while we won't have the qualifying process to go through, there's still going to be a lot of connections. There's still going to be a lot of stories. And again, from a broadcasting perspective, it gives us yet another story to tell, another matchup kind of to have going forward. And from an American soccer perspective, somebody to cheer for. Even though it's not the U.S. team, I'm rooting for Jesse Marsch because he is an American, because of what he has done in the context of coaching Canada. All right, speaking of national teams, should we move on to other ones?
Yeah, and speaking of Mexico, they made news in the last couple of days. They unveiled a preliminary squad for this summer's Copa America. Jimmy Lozano naming 31 players. He'll have to cut that down. But there are some very notable omissions. No Guillermo Ochoa, no Raul Jimenez, and no Chucky Lozano.
All right. So I think that this is an admission from both coach and federation that there is a problem, okay? It's not unfixable, but there is a problem, and if there ever was a moment in order to address the problem, it is this summer. I think that they have recognized that this team has gotten long in the tooth, and whether it's relative, I don't think it's relative to the tournaments this summer, but it's relative to what is coming in 2026. If you notice, a bunch of players from the under-23 team, the Olympic team, I think are being groomed to matriculate up to the full national team. If you notice, some of that old guard is out. And it's not that Ochoa and others might not still play a part in the future, but I think that this is the leadership saying, if we're going to change, we have to change, and we have to change dramatically. And we have the perfect opportunity this summer. And I don't think they're just throwing away their performance relative to the Copa America. But I think they're saying, you know what, we need to use Copa America and use the Olympics, which Mexico has a history of doing, in order to refresh this team. Because if we just continue with what we're doing for the next 2 years, we will get our ass kicked in 2026. And just as I said for Canada and the U.S., it is important that Mexico show well hosting the World Cup in 2026, obviously in all of our backyards.
Yeah, Ochoa did not surprise me that much. There's a growing sentiment that Luis Malagon, the America goalkeeper, should be the starter for Mexico. Jimmy Lozano has seemingly come around to that view, and he figures that if Ochoa is not going to start, better to not bring him in at all to avoid any controversy there. And then on the Raul Jimenez front, I think they finally decided to hand the keys to that attack to Santi Jimenez, which is something they probably should do. They've been reluctant for some reason the last couple of years, but he is their best center forward. Chucky Lozano, though, shocked me because despite everything he said and all their recent struggles and the desire to blow it up and start over, I still thought Chucky would be viewed as a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. And it is a remarkable fall from grace for him. He's only 28, and I remember 6 years ago when you and I were in Russia covering that World Cup, you couldn't walk 5 feet in Moscow without seeing a Mexican fan with a Chucky Lozano jersey and singing songs about him. I mean, he was the Mexican star, and in the last several years, it's kind of fallen apart for him.
And look, he's still a talent, and like I said, he certainly could still be there. But, I think Jimmy Lozano said, I have got to do this right now, because if I don't, there's a chance that I'm going to get fired, and if I do make it to 2026, there's a chance that we could get our asses handed to, and I don't think he wants to do that. So I gotta credit him, and I have to credit to a certain extent this federation that is off maligned for at least I think from the outside, recognizing that they needed to do something, and they needed to do something bold at this moment. In the same way that we talk about Greg Berhalter relative to the summer, I think everybody, whether it's Canada, the United States, or Mexico, relative to 2026, is really looking at this summer as, the start of the 2026 campaign, if you will, and the last moment when you can start to make some dramatic changes. So I'm here for it. And from the outside, they probably should have done it earlier.
Now, I mentioned that Mexico called up 31 players. They're going to have to cut that down. We're not sure if it's going to be cut down to 26 or 23. The Euros have already decided it's going to be 26-player squads, and everybody expects the Copa America to follow suit, but they haven't confirmed that yet. Brazil, incidentally, named their final squad for the Copa America already. They named 23 and then said they're going to add 3 later if it ends up being 26. That was the other big news the last few days. I posted about it on X. Brazil continuing their odd habit of naming their squads way in advance, way earlier than anybody else, which means a manager has to try to guess on the injury recovery of certain players. I don't like that. Nevertheless, I was pleased with the squad. Dorival Jr., I think, is off to a pretty good start on the Brazil bench. Now, I will say, I think he called up a good squad relative to the players we have available now. But all those larger narratives about Brazil remain. This is far from vintage Brazil. It's a transition period. And so I saw a lot of U.S. fans on X posting, we could beat this team, and they should feel that way. This is not that intimidating of a squad. The names don't pop that much. And any top 20 national team, including the U.S., should view a game against Brazil right now as eminently winnable. So I completely understand that reaction from U.S. fans. Nevertheless, I was fairly pleased with the squad that Dorival Jr. named.
I feel like I have to push back a little, Mosse, in that, I feel like I've been the Brazilian over the last couple of years here in terms of the bullishness that I have had for this Brazil team. And I feel like it's almost a backhanded compliment that you're preempting this. If and when the U.S. team were to beat Brazil, it wouldn't be that big a feat because in your eyes, this team isn't that good. And while the names don't pop, I will give it to you, in the way that they have in the past, this is still a good quality team. This is still, I think, an elite team, and this is still a team that if the U.S. were to beat them, it would be worthy of celebration and praise, and certainly would check that box relative to Greg Berhalter and, the narrative out there that he doesn't have that one defining type of moment against an elite opponent. So I think that I'm gonna still say that this is a much better team than you will give it credit for. I'm excited to see it, and who knows, maybe some of these names come 2026 will have established themselves in this summer, and even though they're the same names, your reaction might be very, very different when that 23 roster or 26 roster comes out for 2026.
And we should remind people, no Neymar. He picked up an ACL injury late last year, not back yet, so he's going to miss this Copa America. The attack has a real La Liga flavor. You've got Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, and Endrick, who's going to be a teammate of Vinicius and Rodrigo with Real Madrid this upcoming season. You've got Rafinha at Barcelona, and then this kid Savinho, who's been a revelation at Girona this season and is likely headed to Manchester City for the next campaign. The midfield is all Premier League players. I'm hoping the starting trio ends up being Douglas Luiz, Bruno Guimarães, and Lucas Paquetá. You've got the PSG pair at the back, and Marquinhos and Lucas Beraldo. You've got Gabriel Magalhães from Arsenal. You've got Eder Militão from Real Madrid. Goalkeepers, Alisson, Ederson, and the emerging Bento. So, there's some talent there. It's a young squad, but some players that I do like. We'll see. We play the U.S. in a friendly before the Copa America. Hopefully Brazil doesn't embarrass itself in that game.
Oh, my God. Yeah, it sounds like a horrible team. All right, who else do we got?
Well, the reason that U.S. fans feel like they could beat Brazil is because you have guys like Christian Pulisic who are arriving at this summer in fantastic form as we transition to this past weekend in Serie A. AC Milan claimed the 5-1 home win over Cagliari. Christian Pulisic scored twice. He's up to 15 goals in all competitions this season. While Yunus Musa went all 90 minutes, he started a lot more games in the stretch run here at the end of the campaign. So good vibes all around for the U.S. at AC Milan.
Yeah, great vibes. You mentioned Yunus Musa, who, there were some concerns, and, it's almost not fair to compare him to what Christian Pulisic was doing, but more starts, more minutes, that's a good sign even going into this summer for the national team and for his future there. And then, Christian Pulisic, this is, I feel like at the beginning of the year, we'll have to go back and look, we were predicting, what range of goals he would have and be involved with. And I think we might have underplayed or underpredicted as to what he would do. But this is wonderful, and he puts himself certainly in line as one arguably the MVP for this AC Milan team going forward. Now, this wasn't a brilliant season for AC Milan, but this was a brilliant season for Christian Pulisic, and he was healthy. He was consistent and productive, and it was pretty fun to see.
I will say, I know we don't like to let facts get in the way of a good stat, but I saw this flying around all weekend that Pulisic has scored the most non-penalty goals by a midfielder for AC Milan in a season since Kaká in such and such year. Are we calling Pulisic a midfielder now? Did I miss a memo on that?
So that's what they called him since a mid. So what position would you say Kaká played?
He was a gray area too, but I would say he's more of a midfielder than Pulisic.
Oh, hell no. Really?
Yeah.
I would say he's more in advanced. I don't think he's no. I would.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
I don't think either
the
of
argument
them
could be Kaká doesn't apply either, but certainly Christian Pulisic. It's a stretch to frame any stat as if he's a midfielder, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But in this day and age where there's not the two forwards up there, those wingers, they
you play
they move all over the place.
If you call it a 4-2-3-1, then it is a gray area what those three are behind the center forward. So to your point, I guess it's valid. But nevertheless, whatever position you call it, he's had a phenomenal season. He is fortunate that in Serie A they do have goal line technology, unlike La Liga, because that second goal of his, the referee was able to right away signal that it was a goal. He didn't have to wait for a VAR review and see if he had the right angle to see if the ball crossed the line. So he's fortunate about that.
Who would you vote for him for MVP for AC Milan?
Boy, he's up there for sure. I mean, I love Rafael Leão, and he was terrific in this match. He's probably their best player, but you could argue Pulisic had the better season of the two. It's close.
It's just great. It's great. I'm so glad that he found a place, that he's healthy, that he is happy, and it's just, I mean, I think we're probably, we're seeing the best of Christian Pulisic, because everything early on was kind of framed in, hey, he's just burst on the scene, he's young and all that, so there was oohs and ahs. But to do it consistently, and he's not a grizzled veteran by any stretch of the imagination, but he's also not just this young green kid anymore. And it's been fun to see him mature into the player that he is, and who knows, Serie A might have been the place to do that, to get the best out of Christian Pulisic. So let's hope we see more of that, and he's able to translate it into the national team come this summer.
A different story for Juventus. They've had a lousy end to the campaign. They needed an Adrian Rabiot stoppage time goal to salvage a 1-1 draw against last place and already relegated Salernitana. Timmy Weah missed this match through suspension. Weston McKennie started but was subbed off at halftime.
Oof. I mean, what are they playing for? What's going on? I'm not worried about it. I am worried only if, from a contractual standpoint, because we've talked about Weston McKennie, and he's played well. He's going to want more money. He has certainly changed the perception of him after that horrible loan spell over in England. But and I'm not even worried about it. Again, people will want Weston McKennie. I think he will have plenty of job offers going forward. But I would like to see him continue with Juventus. I think they appreciate him. It's just a matter from a financial perspective of how much do they actually appreciate him going forward. And I think that he'll come back stronger if they bring him back next year. I think he'll come back stronger next year and be, again, it's value, right? Not MVP. I'm not talking about that, but just value. This is a player that I can plug into multiple positions. I know I'm going to get something out of it. By all accounts, on and off the field, he's not a pain in the ass. There is value to that in any team in the world and in any country and culture in the world.
Juve have dropped to fourth. Sean Sullivan's beloved Bologna have leapfrogged them into third. Inter, AC Milan, Bologna, and Juve have all clinched Champions League berths. All that's left to settle is fifth place between Atalanta and Roma. But Atalanta have two paths because they're also in the Europa League final against Leverkusen. Let's drop down to City B. Como of Lake Como fame have secured promotion back to Serie A. Nicolas Gioacchini plays on that team. The ownership group includes Thierry Henry and Cesc Fabregas, and Fabregas actually coached the team this past season, so that was big news around the world. Como going back up to Serie A. We also know the promotion playoffs are set. Venezia are involved, so you've got Gianluca Buzio and Tanner Tessman trying to get promoted, and Palermo also involved, so you've got Christopher Lund. So we could have more Americans in Serie A next season.
It was fun seeing Fabregas to give his post game and talk about going to Ibiza and all this kind of stuff. I mean, Parma was actually in Serie A way back when I was playing. You know, they had the Stoichkovs and Esprias and Dino Baggio, Dino Baggio, and a bunch of different players over there. And Como, this is awesome. This is awesome to see. You know, all these Americans that are playing in Serie B, I think they're getting great experience, but it's all with an eye to obviously promotion and getting up there. And it's going to come down to the wire for a lot of these players. And you know, I hope that they get through, but I also hope that when that upgrade that often happens when you are promoted into the next league, that they continue on and they are seen for the value of not just bringing the team up to Serie A, but continuing on to provide value in order to have them compete in Serie A if that happens. So fingers crossed it goes well when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, Fabregas shouldn't have to venture too far. Lake Como is one of the most beautiful places in the world, so where else would you want to celebrate? And yeah, on Parma, they were a powerhouse team in the 90s, as you mentioned. Also, Hernan Crespo, Gigi Buffon started there. You might have faced the teenage Gigi Buffon when he was beginning his career.
Yep, it was amazing. It wasn't even like it's just like a small little place, and the stadium wasn't that good, and they figured it out. And they were good. Fernando Couto, the great center back for Portugal. Yeah. Gosh, a lot of good players. All right, where should we go now?
We go to England next to check in on the Premier League title race. Both teams held serve this past weekend. City won 4-0 away to Fulham. Vardiol, who has suddenly turned into a prolific goal scorer for them, got 2. Foden Alvarez got the others. And then Arsenal were able to grind out a 1-0 away win over Manchester United. Trossard got the only goal. So the weekend ends with Arsenal 1 point ahead, but they only have 1 game left, while City have 2 left. We're taping this on a Monday. On Tuesday, City will play away to Tottenham. The title will definitely be decided on the final day, but the result of this City-Tottenham game will dictate who's in the driver's seat going into that final day.
So, a couple of things. I mean, this is the game, the one, the Tuesday game, and by the time you are listening to this, it certainly might be over and things might have changed. You would still expect Man City to figure this out and to go through. Somebody asked me today on the flight out on the X machine over there, my thoughts on, evidently there are some Spurs fans out there that would rather lose to Man City than do anything to help Arsenal in their quest to become in their quest for the title. And I responded, look, you're talking in terms of a situation that, we love to praise the tribal nature of sports and all of the passion and, all of these fierce rivalries that take place. And so when these seemingly enemies join together against their common enemy, it shouldn't come as any surprise. I don't think that the players necessarily on the field are going to do that. This has not been, it's at times been a really good year, and at times been a bad year when it comes to Spurs. And so it's been off and on, but I don't think anybody would be surprised if Man City go out and get these 3 points against a Spurs team. And really, again, like Manchester United, it depends which Spurs team shows up. But I don't think they're going to take it any less seriously, or they're going to just gift it over to Man City.
Yeah, the one issue for Tottenham is they're still mathematically alive for 4th place and getting a Champions League berth. That wouldn't have been the case if Aston Villa had won today against Liverpool, but that game ended in a 3-3 draw, so Villa failed to seal the deal. So Tottenham have to play this out because they've still got a shot to finish in the top 4. But yeah, let me just say on Arsenal, when you're in a title race against City, all you can do is make them earn it. And that's what was disappointing about last season. We got into this stupid argument when people were taking 2 extremes. Either they bottled it or they deserve no criticism. And the answer was somewhere in the middle. There was no shame in losing out to Manchester City last season, but the way it happened was disappointing. Arsenal imploded. They made it easy on Manchester City. Not so this campaign. If they go out and beat their home to Everton in the last game, if they go take care of business, and I think they will, then Arsenal will have won their last 6 Premier League matches, and 16 of their last 18. So if you lose the title to City in that scenario, you just throw up your hands. Hey, there's nothing you can do. It's what happened to Liverpool a couple of times in this Klopp era. So I think Arsenal can walk away this season if they don't win the title feeling much better than they did last season.
100%. 100%. I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago in that there is a very different feeling relative to Arsenal than there was this time last year, where they just didn't have enough in the tank and they couldn't finish things off. And not that that was necessarily a negative, but it was, okay, in order to actually compete, you have to improve. And I think even if they miss out ultimately by a point here at the end, I mean, I think everybody has to agree that this Arsenal team is better than last year, and therefore Arteta had them heading in the right direction. And if not for the juggernaut that is Man City, they certainly would have won. But what they will have done still should be cause for celebration. And hopefully, doing the things in the offseason to get even better, to keep poking and prodding and to finally get to the top of that mountain. But what was possible was a regression after last year, and they have done anything but. So hats off, even before any of these games are played, to what Arteta and company have done there over this year. It's been phenomenal, and they deserve a tremendous amount of praise, as much as that pains me to tell that fan base and certainly Piers Morgan.
Very quickly on the championship promotion playoffs, Norwich and Leeds played to a 0-0 draw. Josh Sargent came off late with an ankle injury. Doesn't look to be that serious from a U.S. perspective, but he is a doubt for the return leg on Thursday. That's the promotion playoff semifinal. Hopefully Josh Sargent can recover in time to take part in that game.
Yep. I mean, we need our redhead for this summer and beyond.
Then staying with the promotion theme, we move to Germany, and I'm going to make a little wardrobe change for this conversation.
Oh, look at this.
I am rocking a St. Pauli jersey, which was very generously gifted to me by our good friend Ian Joy. And I'm wearing that proudly today because this past weekend, St. Pauli clinched promotion back up to the Bundesliga for the first time in 13 years. And they have one of the most passionate fan bases in world football. So incredible scenes as they celebrated their triumph.
Wow, look at you, sporting. I mean, and for those that are watching, you can see just the euphoria and the excitement, people running on the field and all that kind of stuff. Am I wrong? But I feel like Paul Caligiuri might have had a St. Pauli connection back in the day too. So wonderful scenes, wonderful example of, again, the emotion and the passion that can be generated of a team coming up, and the opportunities both on and off the field that it avails them into Bundesliga. So congratulations to Ian, and if I'm correct, Paul Caligiuri and so many others there when it comes to St. Pauli.
It is confirmed Paul Caligiuri played for St. Pauli, and if you're looking for another American connection, their current manager is a Houston, Texas native, Fabian Hurzler. So congratulations to him for orchestrating this promotion.
You're welcome, Germany. You're welcome, St. Pauli.
Incidentally, in the Bundesliga, Leverkusen this past weekend, 5-0 away to Bochum. They also pulled off another incredible escape last week against Roma. So they're up to 50 games unbeaten in all competitions, 33 in the Bundesliga. Their last game is home to Augsburg. If they avoid defeat there, they will pull off the first ever Bundesliga unbeaten campaign. Even Bayern Munich never managed that. And then afterwards, they'll have two finals. Europa League final against Atalanta in Dublin, and the German Cup final against Kaiserslautern in Berlin. I could see you perhaps attending that game. Leverkusen on the precipice here of finishing this off and completing an incredible unbeaten campaign.
I mean, I'm so close to doing what we talked about a few weeks ago in terms of anointing them the best season of any club in Europe, and what has happened. Again, the Europa thing, it just doesn't get me over the edge, but I can be convinced. And who knows? By the time we talk again next, maybe I will have been convinced. And my trip to Germany, who knows? I might get swayed over there.
So Leverkusen in the Europa League final, Dortmund in the Champions League final, but Bayern Munich came up short in their quest to reach a European final. We taped our last pod on Wednesday morning last week, so we didn't get a chance to talk about this game. The second leg between Real Madrid and Bayern. Remember, the first leg had finished 2-2. In the second leg, Real Madrid claimed a 2-1 victory. All the goals in the second half. Alphonso Davies scored first for Bayern, and then Joselu came on and scored twice late. Real Madrid completing a 4-3 aggregate triumph. They're off to the final. It'll be Real Madrid against Borussia Dortmund June 1st at Wembley Stadium.
Oh, can't wait. It's gonna be awesome. It was there in the palm of Bayern's hand, as you mentioned. Great goal from Alphonso Davies. I didn't know he had it in him with his right foot cutting in, and he just smacks this thing to the far post. And now you think, oh my God, it's really going to happen. And so much after this game has been the talk of the aura and the mystique and the power that you can't necessarily define, but you can feel with this team in this stadium in this type of environment. And time again, Real Madrid over the years, Mosse, they've played these games where, in one sense, you say they have no business winning these games, and yet the fact that they are able to find goals, even in what appears to be magical and miraculous ways, there is a skill to being able to do that, and there is a talent and a collective talent of being able to amass a group that even when things aren't going well, find a way and believe they can find a way. And whether it's just because of in the moment, that group that they have, or whether it's because of the history surrounding them that inspires them, whatever it is, there's something in the water.
I know we're a few days late on this, but I do want to address the controversial ending to that game because I have a different take than most. If you're a Real Madrid hater, you might not want to listen to the next couple minutes of this pod. I thought that was a preposterous amount of stoppage time that the referee gave. Had it been the other way, Bayern Munich were leading the tie, he gave that much time, and Real Madrid scored a goal 90 plus 13, everybody would have been screaming bloody murder. That would have been the talking point afterwards. But because it happened the other way, nobody says anything. So in my view, the de Ligt play should have never happened. The game should have been over by then. It did happen. The referee and the linesman completely screwed it up. But in a roundabout way, I thought we ended up with the correct outcome and the right team advance. To me, the injustice there would have been if Bayern Munich had been allowed to score a goal 90 plus 13 because the referee lost his mind when it came to stoppage time. I went back and looked at that second half, and I know we had VAR reviews and substitutions and goal celebrations, but I'm sorry, it did not add up to 13 minutes. That was crazy to me. Now, the larger and more important point is the one you made on X. This was one of the best posts you've ever sent out. All these people that want to complain that VAR is ruining the game, you were given a reminder there of what this sport looked like before VAR, where linesmen and referees had to make these bang-bang decisions to decide games and had no recourse to look it over. And so if you're complaining about the end of that game, what you're essentially complaining about is that VAR was not permitted to do its job. So I guarantee you the Venn diagram of people that complain about VAR every week and then people that were upset about that call, there's quite an overlap there, and these people don't even realize that they're essentially contradicting themselves.
Yes. Well, I think you articulated it perfectly, and which was what I was trying to do because I get every single day, VAR is ruining it and it sucks and all that kind of stuff. Well, as we say, the train has left the station. And again, in that moment, because I think we have started to romanticize what the game once was. This was actually, I think, important for everybody to see how at times difficult it was and at times how ridiculous it was. And now that we do have the technology. Now, I'm not happy that an AR seems to have lost his mind. But again, in that mind at that point, they think that it's subjective. It is subjective because he has to make a decision, but they thought that it was a clear offside. Looking back on it, I don't know how they thought that, but still, it provided us with a look into the past. And I think every once in a while, as we scream and yell about technology and we scream and yell about what VAR is and isn't, it's important to be reminded of what the game once was. And while it makes mistakes, it's okay.
Yeah, VAR was the big winner of that game because there were 3 massive decisions in the second half, and in the 2 in which VAR was brought into the equation, we ended up with the correct outcome. The disallowed Real Madrid goal, VAR spotted the Nacho shove on Kimmich, and then the second Real Madrid goal, VAR corrected a wrong offsides call on Joselu, and then the one player where VAR wasn't brought into the equation is the one that everybody's yelling about. So in my view, VAR was the big winner of the night.
Before we leave this and we kind of kiss off Bayern Munich, was this a failure for Harry Kane this season?
It's not his fault. He handled his business just fine, but it is mind-boggling that After all those years at Tottenham, no trophies, he decided to heck with it. I'm going to go to the one place that's the biggest guarantee to win trophies in all of world football, and he somehow catches the one season, first time in more than a decade, where Bayern Munich have not won a single trophy. So it worked out disastrously for him, but I don't give him any grief for it. He was phenomenal.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. All right, anything else, Mosse?
Well, so we now have a neat doubleheader on June 1st. The UEFA Champions League final is early that day, Real Madrid against Dortmund at Wembley. And then later that day is the Pachuca-Columbus CONCACAF Champions Cup final from the Estadio Hidalgo. Speaking of Columbus, they're going to be mentioned next when we do our MLS weekend review.
Ooh, okay. Let's take a quick break and come back with that. Mosse, you set it up perfectly. Don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back. As Mosse mentioned, there was all sorts of interesting action, both on and off the field, during the game and after the game when it comes to MLS. Where should we start, Mosse?
Yeah, this past weekend, we were reminded again that hell is real. Cincinnati claimed a 2-1 away win over Columbus, their first ever victory in Columbus. Their new Venezuelan teenage striker, Kelsy, got a goal. Lucho Acosta scored the other. Big win for Cincy.
Cincy going into Columbus. And again, to be fair to Columbus, they are fighting on multiple fronts. And I think Columbus's season will not start until after you mentioned CONCACAF Champions Cup final. Having said that, this is their major rival, their in-state rival. This is for bragging rights. And Cincinnati came in, and I thought we're deserved of winning this game. I thought we're the better team. And they get their moment, Cincinnati does, and they get to do it in Columbus. So it was a fun game, and if hell is real, at least for the moment, that hell in terms of the rivalry is felt mostly by Columbus right now. So congratulations to Cincinnati. But there will be more to be heard from when it comes to Columbus and when it comes to this rivalry going forward.
The Galaxy and RSL finished 2-2. RSL jumped out to a 2-0 lead thanks to a pair of goals by Arango. Then Gabriel Peck made it 2-1. And Miguel Berry in second-half stoppage time equalized, taking advantage of a mistake by McMath, who got caught in no man's land there in the box.
Yeah, Ricky Puig, you put him on the ball. He was back on the field for the Galaxy, and you put him on the ball, and good things happen. When he hit the cross into the box, I thought, oh, this is the end of the game. He didn't get it where he wanted. And yet, goalkeeping error and just a split moment of hesitation, and that's the difference. And while this wasn't the result necessarily that the Galaxy wanted, first off, they're playing against a very good RSL team, and I think that RSL, even though they also didn't get the result that they wanted, both teams went home angry, and I think both teams should also go home and say, all right, from an LA Galaxy standpoint, this was one that we saved at the death, and to have that in your arsenal, that's a good thing that they can do it, even if it comes at the cost of a mistake from the opposition. They will take that. RSL, I think they let this one get away, but again, coming into LA and the way that they played, I mean, it was in the palm of their hand. And goalkeepers, you can't live with them. You can't throw them off the bench.
Club de Foot Montreal jumped out to a 2-0 lead over Inter Miami, but Inter Miami came storming back and won 3-2. Matias Rojas with a sensational free kick to make it 2-1. Suarez made it 2-2, and Kremaski scored the game winner. So Messi doesn't even find the back of the net this past weekend, and yet Inter Miami still come back to get all 3 points.
I mean, so Rojas is the real deal, and the rich get richer in terms of the quality that Inter Miami is able to field, and he's just getting more and more comfortable. Luis Suarez, I think there's a lot of mea culpas out there, including mine and yours and others, when it comes to what we thought he was going to be or the consistency. And it's still, they still got the dog days of summer coming up, and, there will still be up and down moments, but he continues to be money when it comes to putting the ball on the back of the net. And then obviously, young players, Kremansky and others out there. And even in a game where Messi doesn't necessarily feature and score, he features on the field, he still has an effect. And I think he's still, when you look around and you go down 2-0 on the road, you say, oh, this is probably it. This is where it's the end. And yet now I think they're looking around and saying, no, we are never out with the talent that we have, with the things that we have done. And that's something that has to scare the opposition, because even at 2-0 with Montreal, well, we started to look around and say, oh, man, we were seeing something here from Montreal. that pink team, man, oh man, they find a way back into the game. And we even got to see a pissed off Messi in terms of some of the things that are going on when it comes to MLS.
Yes, Messi involved in a curious moment. He was fouled, shaken up, and per the new rules, he had to come off for 2 minutes. He was visibly annoyed about that. Tata Martino complained about it after the match. We discussed this when these rules were first implemented. You ran the risk of being overly cynical here and assuming that if a guy is down for more than 30 seconds, it has to be time wasting. That's not always the case. So you end up sometimes essentially rewarding the fouler and punishing the fouled. And the fact that Messi is the first player in the league to really get up in arms over this, but supposedly there have been others as well that just haven't been as demonstrative about it. But yeah, this is going to catch everybody's attention. Is going to trigger more debate about these new rules.
Yeah, anything that Messi does, captures people's attention, and it sells and it clicks and all the different things that we have talked about. And so him getting angry at an implementation of a rule, that's going to make news. Now, I think he and Tata Martino would make the point, and Tata did after the game, that this is a losing team, and so in an effort to curb time wasting, which is admirable, and by the way, statistically, MLS can show you that it's already made a dramatic effect and a positive effect. That's all fine and well, but usually the losing team is not trying to waste time, and so in that sense, I think there are possibilities for it to be tweaked. And to MLS's credit, and to be fair to them, they have talked, Ali Curtis over there and others have talked about the possibility going forward of tweaking some things to make it fair and to deal with some of these things. And when Messi speaks, it holds a lot of weight, and people will listen. But I think the overall good that has come with this new rule is, I think it's difficult to argue against it in general. And there are some things and some moments and things that can be tweaked going forward, but this has been a net positive for the league in curbing that thing that a lot of people are just adamant about stamping out, which is the time wasting that goes on. For some people, it doesn't bother them, but there's a lot of people. You talk to a guy like Rob Stone, and it just drives him nuts. So he is from the top of the stands, cheering and applauding everything that is going on now, even if it pisses off Messi every once in a while.
So we have Messi and Rob Stone going head to head. It's a clash of heavyweights on this issue. NYCFC claimed a 3-2 away win over Toronto. The big story here, though, at the final whistle, there was quite the melee between the two teams, and John Herdman asked about it afterwards, said that during a previous meeting between these two teams this season, Nick Cushing punched the Toronto player.
Yeah, this just came out of nowhere because the incident that he is referring to evidently happened a couple of weeks ago. There is no video, there is no reporting of it, and because of this brouhaha that happened after the game, by the way, which NYCFC won in Toronto, this has now all come out. And look, for John Herdman to say that, it better be true, okay? I don't want it to be true in that it would be horrible, but if you're accusing somebody of that, you damn well better have proof, because once that's out there, it is out there. And so this is some ugly stuff, not just the pushing and fighting out there, but what was said after the game. And so they're going to have to get to the bottom of it. And who knows, it might just end up being a he said type of situation, because if there is no documentation, if there is no proof, no video out there about what happened, then you're just saying it and you're not able to prove anything like that. But this story is certainly not dead, because there are now reputations on the line, and you are responsible for the accusations that you make, even in the heat of battle. Shall we say. So this story has legs, and I think will continue. I think Tom Bogart over there at The Athletic's doing a good job reporting on everything that's going on.
And then in the latest installment of what John Strong calls the Great American Soccer Rivalry, Seattle claimed a 2-1 away win over Portland. Felipe Mora scored first, Christian Roldan equalized, and in the second half, Raul Ruiz with a sensational strike to give the Sounders all 3 points.
So it's one thing to beat your big rival, and in this case for Seattle to win on the road, as we mentioned with Cincinnati. But it's another thing when you're desperate, and Seattle is desperate. So that it's the rival is only a cherry on top. They were desperate for 3 points. This is huge. Portland still has yet to show that they are anything but a mediocre team right now. They certainly can improve, but this isn't going to help.
Portland winless in their last 9, so Phil Neville has his work cut out for him there. That is it.
All right, let's take another quick break. When we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi, that part of the show where you send in your comments, questions, and concerns. Keep in mind that our handle out there on the social media platforms is SOTU with Alexi, or you can call into our State of the Union podcast hotline, which is 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. What do we have this show, Mosse?
Let's start with a voicemail. Let's take a listen right now.
Hey, Alexi and Mosse. It's Eduardo Morales calling from Moreno Valley, California. Of course, I am also known as the person to have his voicemail being recorded first than anyone else on the show, and it's a brag that I like to say to this very day as well. So last summer, I saw a pretty interesting post over on the Copa 90 Instagram page about memorable calls from commentators that had happened in iconic moments, like the Dutch commentator freaking out over Dennis Bergkamp's World Cup goal, to Sergio Aguero's game-winning goal to help Manchester City clinch the Premier League title in 2012 by Martin Tyler. So my question to you guys is, what is one memorable call on commentary that gets you in the feels, that makes you feel emotional, that you still remember to this very day? Like, what's a very memorable moment? Mosse, I'm pretty sure there's quite a lot for you for Brazil, and I'd like to see that as well. And, of course, for you, Alexi, for the United States. So I'd like to know what is that. Thank you guys for taking my question, and keep it up. Take care.
Okay, Mr. Morales coming back again. Well, we appreciate every single time that you send in, including the historic first time when it came to our State of the Union podcast hotline. I guess this would be a good time also to tell you that while I am going over to Germany, don't worry, we'll have plenty of State of the Union, including a really interesting interview with our good friend John Strong, who actually talks about some of the things that that this question pertains to. So I think you'll really like tuning into that. Look, when it comes to the call, I think, the perfect call is a combination of obviously the words that are used, the emphasis and the emotion attached to those words, but then also what is actually happening on the field. And sometimes, the greatest calls don't even necessarily have a lot of words. And I think back when it comes to, American soccer calls, and I can't remember all of them, but whether it's Jack Edwards, who by the way just retired from years and years in hockey coaching, or doing the as the voice of the Boston Bruins. Congratulations to him, and well done. But back when he was doing soccer, that's why he's here. When Clint Mathis scored in the 2002 World Cup, I think about that. I think about John Strong's call in Mexico City when Michael Bradley scored his long distance. And while he doesn't necessarily like it, I like it because it shows a human and personality. When it comes to other games, mentioned Martin Tyler, and I associate some of those calls with his voice, but they never jacked me up in the way that, say, an Andres Cantor does. I mean, even in 2022, seeing not just, and nowadays we see them also, but hearing and seeing Andres when Argentina won the World Cup and knowing how important it was to him. One of my favorite parts of doing big tournaments is when we get the call from the other languages. And oftentimes we'll splice them into the goal celebrations or the goal highlight packages, because it's so interesting and fun to hear, even if in languages that you don't understand, how other languages and cultures interpret a goal and do all that. When it comes to just in general, obviously, the 1980 Olympic call and all that. Do you believe in miracles? Are always going to stand. I don't have a lot of American football calls that I remember. Mosse, what about you? What do you got?
Well, he mentioned Brazilian soccer. The most prominent play-by-play guy in Brazil for decades, he just retired recently, was a guy named Galvão Bueno. So pretty much any memorable Brazil call, winning the World Cup in 94, 2002, when I think of that, I think of him. But, he brought up Martin Tyler on the call. Yeah, that Aguero goal against QPR in 2012. There was a goal that Arshavin scored for Arsenal in a Champions League game against Barcelona, and Martin Tyler got very excited about that and had a great call. And the John Strong one I love. is Zlatan's first goal on his debut in that
Are you
El
kidding me?
Trafico. He goes, come on. And he really captured what we were all thinking at that moment. Like, really? I mean, did he actually really just do that? So that was a great one.
Oh, that's right. I love that one. I actually was working at ESPN at the time when Aguero scored that goal. We were doing that last day, and so I mean, we were sitting there at ESPN watching it back then. That was amazing. I just don't, and I'm always that's a much more visual thing than it is the audio thing when it comes to Martin Tyler. But look, here's to some great calls this summer and going forward, and some of them can be iconic, and some of them, just laying out and letting the pictures do all the talking. That in and of itself is an art, and John Strong and anybody else will tell you about that. So definitely tune in next week when we have our John Strong interview, because he talks also about the craft and how much he has grown, not just in goal calls, but just calling games out there. Thank you, Mr. Morales. We'll talk to you again. What's next, Mosse?
Next up, a question on X. Alex asks, how does one explain that the U.S. Soccer Federation cannot simply implement pro-rel with impunity? Many don't understand the consequences that could befall the U.S. Soccer Federation. What are the hurdles?
What are the hurdles? Okay, so over the last couple of days, I've fallen down yet again into the the rabbit hole that is promotion relegation. And it is evergreen. It is catnip out there. People talk about it, and people want to talk about it. And I'm fine. I enjoy talking about it. I enjoy having these back and forth conversations. Not everybody enjoys the answers that I give, but for the most part, my answers haven't changed over the years. And I will reiterate, I have no problem with promotion relegation. I have lived it. I see its value. I can see how exciting it is, but I don't need it in order to enjoy my soccer. When it comes to your question here, Scott, implementing pro-rel, and I guess we have to define pro-rel. Pro-rel is in the traditional sense of what exists elsewhere around the world. And that's where pretty much everybody is in one kind of pyramid. But implementing that would mean, in a certain sense, mandating. Again, I don't want pro-rel mandated on anybody out there. I think that nobody's stopping anybody, any league or any collection of leagues, of putting together a system that has pro-rel within them. Nobody's stopping MLS from doing it within MLS, MLS 1, MLS 2, whatever you want to be. But I don't think it should be mandated on anybody. And I certainly don't think, when it comes to the United States Soccer Federation, who is in the business of doing good for soccer in the United States, that mandating, and in doing so, potentially destroying the most successful professional soccer league in American history, is something that they would want to do. And so what I would want the Federation to do is to support MLS as it continues to grow and continues to be this very popular and successful brand. And if there are others that want to implement promotion relegation, let them do it and support them over there. And we'll see, what the market has to say and what the customer says when it comes to the product out there. So even if they could do it legally and mandate it on MLS or anybody else out there, it doesn't mean that it should be done. 30 years into this this little venture that is MLS, and I think you're being disingenuous if you can't, even those that hate MLS, I think you're being disingenuous if you can't see the value that MLS has brought to soccer in the United States and Canada, for that matter, over the last 30 years, relative to any other league, any other venture that has existed in American soccer in the past.
Now, as we talked about on our last pod, last week, Detroit City FC eliminated the Houston Dynamo in the round of 32 of the U.S. Open Cup. The fallout from that match has exposed some of the fissures in American soccer, because in his post-match press conference, Ben Olsen was asked if a result like that proved that the gap between MLS and the USL is not as big as people think, and he dismissed that and said, no, the gap is huge. A lot of people were annoyed about that. And then this comedian, who is, I guess, a part owner of Detroit City FC, like yourself, John Glazer, he went on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and he said, "Up yours, Houston," taking a shot at the Houston Dynamo. You reacted to that clip on X by saying that it was an example of how USL has allowed its divisional sanction to define the league and therefore the perception of quality relative to MLS.
Yeah, my point was this. USL is sanctioned, USL Championship is sanctioned Division II by the United States Soccer Federation. But the divisional sanctions have nothing to do with the competition and quality actually on the field. They are living up to minimum standards when it comes to all the things that are around the field. There is nothing stopping, for example, USL from spending as much money as they want to have as high a quality a product on their field as they want. And so my point to USL is just brand yourself USL Division One. The division sanction from USSF shouldn't matter because it's all about the quality on the field. And so I was looking at this because when he got on, John Glazer got on this actual program, the way that he described USL to Jimmy Fallon's audience was, it's the division below MLS. And in doing so, he does a disservice to USL. Never, ever let your divisional sanction define who you are when it has nothing to do with what's going on the field. Which is why I've said to USL, do what you're doing and brand yourself whatever it is that you want. And don't even worry about the sanctioning from USSF. That's something that they do behind the scenes. But up front, whether it's on television or any place else, you just say, we're just another league. We're just a different league than in Major League Soccer. Not better, not worse. Not above, not below. Just a different league. And go at it from that angle over there and see how that goes. But it was an interesting little conversation, an interesting little peek into the branding and how USL looks at themselves, but also how others from the outside, from a perspective, look at USL.
Now, we often talk about MLS conforming to the European model, but somebody on X had some fun with what it would look like if the Premier League conformed to the MLS model. And they put together a whole playoff bracket of what the Premier League playoffs would look like this season based on what the current standings are. And I know you got a kick out of this because City and Arsenal would get byes in the first round, but then you'd have all these tasty matchups. Liverpool would face Everton, Newcastle would face Manchester United, Tottenham would take on Fulham. So it was just kind of speculating on what it would look like if England conformed to the United States instead.
It would be fascinating, and credit goes to Mr. MLS Memes. I guess it would be 3DEF over there on X who put this out. And the reason why I was commenting on this and why it kind of tickled me is that we were going through the whole pro-rel thing, and people were saying there's no relegation in MLS, and I said, well, the relegation line is the playoff line, and each year a certain group don't get over that line, and therefore they are prohibited from playing with the elites to go for MLS Cup. But if the opposite happened, and the EPL, the most popular league in the world, actually implemented a playoff type of system, it was just fun to see who would be playing whom. Obviously, we've talked about Arsenal and Man City. They would get the bye, if you will, and then play these wild card winners, and then you would have the EPL champion relative to playoffs. Now, I'm telling you right now, as popular as the EPL is, these games would be money, literally would be money in terms of the amount of money that they make, but also in terms of the attention that they brought. I don't think there's a chance in hell that they are ever going to do this, but it would be fun to see, after all is said and done, if this was implemented, what the reaction would be from fans of the teams and then from fans around the world of the actual league.
That is it.
I got things to do. I'm here in New York City. I got all sorts of stuff. Our friend Gianni Infantino, Mosse.
Yes.
So as we mentioned, Gianni Infantino was over here a couple weeks ago visiting the U.S. and doing interviews and talking about things that he sees and things that he wants. And this is all geared up towards what's coming in 2026 with the World Cup. And look, he's the president of FIFA. He wants the World Cup to go off in a positive way, and he wants the World Cup to leave a legacy as it did in 1994. He wants things to be in place, or he wants to at least try to affect change in a positive nature through the World Cup. That's kind of what FIFA does, and certainly as the president of FIFA, that's something that he would want to talk about. So he got to talking about things that he's seen in the U.S., and he happened to bring up the pay-to-play situation. And for those that know or don't know, this is, when it comes to youth soccer, the fact that many young boys and girls, if they want to play soccer, they have to pay in order to play soccer. And while pay-to-play certainly exists, don't let anybody tell you that it doesn't exist around the world. There are many places around the world that also have places where it is not pay to play, and there are sponsorship. And Gianni, laid out how, hey, the rich guy in town pays for the fields, and then the lawyer in town pays for the shoes, and somebody else pays for the balls, and it was all this kind of Sound of Music, idealistic type of talk when it comes to what it is. We've talked about pay to play in the past. I would love nothing more than to see Gianni's vision of free soccer come to pass, and that every man, woman, and child who wants to play soccer in the United States can do it for free. The thing is, and Gianni understands this more than anybody, free soccer costs money. And so who is going to pay for it? And why are they going to pay for it? What are they going to get out of it, other than if it's just a charity or if it's just out of the benevolence of their heart? Why should they pay for it when it comes to soccer? And Gianni Infantino makes a lot of money as the president of FIFA. And well done. Make as much money as you possibly can, Gianni. But if pay to play goes away, again, who's going to pay for it? And who's going to pay all of those different coaches out there that work their ass off day in and day out, that are teaching the kids out there, all of those different administrators that are out there, all of those referees, all of the people that work in the industry, all of the people that work in and at the grassroots of American soccer, who, by the way, are not even making close to what Gianni Infantino is making. So the sentiment I appreciate, but for someone of his position, I know you can talk about lofty goals, but I thought that it was a little naive and idealistic. And he understands that. He gets that. He's just kind of throwing it out there. And again, if he and FIFA want to make up the shortfall, or want to take all of the money that FIFA has out there and give Americans all the free soccer that they want, and still make sure that the people that are teaching that free soccer, or organizing that free soccer, or refereeing that free soccer are being paid what they deserve, have at it, my friend. We will gladly take all of the FIFA money that you care to give us in order to make pay-to-play go away, in terms of the kids out there not having to pay to play soccer. But until that time, it's a lot more difficult and a lot more complex than you make it out to be. Anything else, Mosse?
No, enjoy yourself in New York and then in Germany.
Yes, as I said, we will still have shows. I will still be checking in from over there in Germany. I will be going to a bunch of different cities, doing all sorts of interesting things. I like to think that they're going to be interesting. We will document the whole thing, and then as we go through our summer of soccer with Euros and Copa, we will splice the different features that we do over there, and you'll see me probably fish out of water type of situations being made fun of, and you can laugh at me all through the summer. So it's going to be fun. We're going to have a good time. But I will not be out of sight, out of mind. Believe me, I will be checking in. Anything before we go?
That's it.
All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reviewing. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for doing all the different things that you do when it comes to the State of the Union. We will talk again later on this week. And until then, as always, my friends from New York City, size the day.